And on this episode, we're looking at the murder of Keith Green. Let's jump right into it.
When Tiffany Lee stood trial for the murder of her ex-boyfriend, she became known as the Hillsborough Heiress. Tiffany came from a family of real estate investors worth tens of millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars.
Shout out to all my real estate investors. You guys don't know I'm a real estate agent, so shout out to y'all.
In the spring of 2016, the father of her children went missing. It just so happened that the two had spent months arguing over money. And Tiffany was the last person believed to have seen him alive.
Money can definitely ruin your marriage, ruin a couple.
Hi there, I'm Kevin, and welcome to Just Thought Lounge. The case we're about to examine is another head-scratcher. All signs point to one version of events, that is, until more details came to light and a very different picture began to emerge. Let's take a look. On Friday, April 29th, 2016, a hiker in the Golden Gate Park in San Francisco came upon a cell phone discarded on a trail. It belonged to the 27-year-old culinary student and father of two, Keith Green. Keith had left his apartment in Millbrae the night before at about 9 p.m., leaving behind his...
All right. If you live in Millbrae or you live around this area, get in the comments if you heard of this. Was this a big deal around in that area? I'm from the Bay Area as well, but let me know if you guys heard of this case, if you guys live in that area.
Car, keys, and wallet. For the previous 6 months, he had been staying with family friend Angela Dunn, following his breakup with a longtime girlfriend and mother of his children, Tiffany Lee. Angela reported that Keith had plans to meet with Tiffany that night to discuss custody arrangements for their two daughters, Vivian and Nia, aged 4 and 2. When Keith left the apartment, he was dressed casually in dark sweatpants and a t-shirt, a pair of sneakers on his feet. The plan was to chat briefly in the parking lot of the Pancake House restaurant, which was directly across the street and had already closed for the day. After leaving for that meeting, Keith never returned home. He was reported missing the next day. The park where his cell phone was found is a roughly 30-minute drive north from the Pancake House, towards the Golden Gate Bridge. For weeks, friends and family distributed flyers around Millbrae and the San Francisco area, desperate for a clue as to what had become of the aspiring chef and loving father. On May 11th, Sonoma County Sheriff's deputies found a body in a field off Highway 101 near Geyserville. It was a further 2 hours drive north from Golden Gate Park. It had been 2 weeks since Keith was last seen alive. Dental records were used to identify the remains. 1 week later, officials confirmed that they had found the body of Keith Green. When he was discovered, he was wearing only his socks. His front teeth were broken. Keith had died of a single gunshot wound through...
Man, that must be hard. Just, your family's missing, family members are missing. But, it's like closure, but it's like, man, I was hoping I'd find you alive, but...
the neck.
His cell phone was found unattended the next morning in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park. He left his car and his wallet. So that raised some suspicion with us. He was identified through dental records, and as far as it being a homicide, there was evidence that was located on his person.
Keith's ex-girlfriend, 30-year-old Tiffany Lee, told investigators that she had indeed met with Keith on April 28th at the Pancake House, where they spoke for about an hour. Sometime just after 10 p.m., she had left the parking lot, driving her Mercedes-Benz SUV. She left Keith alone and drove home. At first, she expressed doubt that Keith was genuinely missing, believing that it was possible that he was attempting to scam her by pretending to be kidnapped. Since parting ways months earlier, their relationship had turned acrimonious. Discussions over how to fairly split finances, as well as time spent with their daughters, had been contentious.
Do you think she did it?
Keith and Tiffany had met in 2009 and soon after moved in together in a $7 million mansion purchased for Tiffany by her mother in the prestigious neighborhood of Hillsborough. Although their romance
must be nice. Man, I wish moms would buy me a $7 million crib. That's crazy. It must come from money, like real money.
had moved quickly. The two were not an obvious match. Up to that point in their lives, they had been on very different paths. Born in Beijing, Tiffany grew up in Silicon Valley, had attended prestigious schools, and prepared to join the lucrative family business. She held a master's degree in business from the University of San Francisco. Upon graduation, Tiffany began a $100,000 a year role helping to manage her family's real estate holdings. Her mother, Li Ji-hong, had reportedly amassed the family fortune in Beijing in the 1980s through joint ventures with construction companies owned by the Chinese military. The family owned a massive real estate portfolio, which included at least 2 high-rises in Beijing and multiple properties through joint ventures with construction companies owned by the Chinese military. The family owned a massive real estate portfolio, which included at least 2 high-rises in Beijing and multiple properties in the Bay Area. By 2016, Tiffany estimated that the family was worth somewhere between 50 to 100 million US dollars, though other external estimates place the family's wealth in multiples greater than that. Keith Green was born in a working-class neighborhood. External estimates. By 2016, Tiffany estimated that the family was worth somewhere between 50 to 100 million US dollars, though other external estimates place the family's wealth in multiples greater than that. Keith Green was born in a working-class neighborhood in the shadow of Silicon Valley. His parents divorced when he was young, and he was raised mainly by his mother, Colleen. As a youth, Keith excelled at athletics. He was a celebrated high school quarterback and made friends easily. After dropping out of college, he flipped between periods of unemployment and temporary work. But after meeting Tiffany, he had an opportunity to pursue further education. Li Ji-hong reportedly covered the $40,000 a year tuition for Keith to attend the Cordon Bleu Culinary School in San Francisco. He was due to graduate that September. Keith and Tiffany welcomed their daughters in 2012 and 2014. Their home in Hillsborough was staffed with nannies, housekeepers, and landscapers. The couple had their pick of exotic sports cars and SUVs to drive. For over 6 years, their life appeared nearly perfect.
That's crazy. Having a significant other that comes from money. It's kind of like you just get blessed into it. Fancy cars, big houses, nannies. Wow. Must be good.
On May 3rd, less than 1 week after Keith went missing, Tiffany wrote an email to the Hillsborough Police Department expressing concern over his disappearance. Although she had at first suspected an elaborate scheme put on by her ex-boyfriend to elicit more money from her, she was later accepting of the fact that he was truly in danger.
I guess you're missing or something? Can you give me a call back? I don't know if it's Trump. So give me a call back when you hear this.
Tiffany asked if police could give her information about putting up a billboard to help find him. On the same day that she wrote the email to police, Tiffany also reached out to Keith's mother, Colleen, to express concern. Texting, "Hi Colleen, I know you think Keith's disappearance has something to do with me, and you don't want to talk to me, but I just want to tell you that I'm really worried too." The day after the email was received, she was invited into the station to speak with detectives. The relationship between Tiffany and Keith ended 6 months before his murder. He discovered that she was having an affair with a friend of his, who may have also been his marijuana dealer, a man named Kaveh Bayat.
Damn. That's messed up. Yeah. At least, if you go cheat, find somebody I don't know. That's crazy.
Once the affair was public, Tiffany moved Cave into the mansion, and Keith moved out. Tensions were understandably very high at that time. Things intensified further as Tiffany and Cave brazenly flaunted their new love, purchasing him a Ferrari to celebrate, and designating him daddy to the two girls.
Her first donut, y'all. My daughter doing her donuts.
Yeah.
As Tiffany and Cave continued on with family life, disputes with Keith escalated. Tiffany recorded phone conversations with him, as well as friends who were pulled into the arguments.
He wants Cobb killed and just now hang up saying, I'm gonna kill you? That's not cool.
Okay, hold on. So Keith said that. So if I ask Keith right now, he's gonna say yes, right?
Yes.
We'll send you the recording.
Okay, hold on.
In front of you, I'm asking him, okay?
Yeah.
Did you say that you're gonna have Cab killed? Talk to Issa? Okay. But why? Okay, but why?
Their phone calls included insults and threats. Many of the conversations centered around money. Keith was finding it difficult to make ends meet as a culinary student in San Francisco. He was asking for regular funds from Tiffany to maintain his standard of living. At one point, in desperation, he suggested that his only option may be to move to Ohio, where his grandmother had a rental property. Of course, he did not wish to leave his girls.
It sucks. I don't want to leave the kids, but I don't know what to do. I've been so stressed trying to figure this out, and it's been really, really bad.
I'm saying to you, we both made mistakes, and that's that. Let's just move on. There's nothing I can say right now.
It's very easy for you to sit here and say whatever you want to say because your life has not changed at all. The only thing that's different is that you have a new man that you sleep next to at night. That's it.
I'm very happy. Aren't you happy that I'm happy? I thought if you care about me, you would think that I'm happy.
Text messages then showed that Keith was seeking a more stable arrangement in California. He suggested that Tiffany provide him with the new BMW she had purchased, $20,000 for furniture, and $4,000 a month going forward. He wanted to create a life that is parallel to yours with the kids, he said. She claims to have then offered him $4,000 a month, $20,000 up front, and a Range Rover. But neither she nor Cave were pleased by the negotiation. In an exchange that took place just weeks before Keith went missing, investigators believed they may have found the moment that Tiffany and her new lover agreed to have Keith Green killed. He was trying to work you for money again, Cave wrote. What a little snake. That's all he wants. It's not about the kids. Tiffany agreed.
Wait, how the hell he called him a snake, but he took his girl? That don't make sense. You the snake, buddy.
Responding, okay, green light. Tiffany told investigators about the ongoing discussions with Keith over money.
Beginning, when we first broke off, he asked each kid $20 million. He asked my mom for each kid. And my mom said, you're ridiculous.
Would you harm Keith?
No, I would not harm Keith.
Would you have anybody else harm Keith?
No, I would not do that.
Keith's cell phone had already provided investigators with insights into his movements on the night he disappeared. Between 9:27 and 9:56, it connected to cell towers near to the Millbrae Pancake House, where he was with Tiffany. At 10:49 and 10:56, however, it had traveled towards Hillsborough. These cell tower connections mirrored the movements that Tiffany's Mercedes took after leaving the Pancake House. Video surveillance from the intersection of El Camino Real and Millbrae Avenue captured at approximately 10:15 a gray Mercedes G63 traveling southbound.
He was in the car with you, Tiffany.
Technology today is crazy. I don't know how people be getting away with murders and crime. I mean, you got your cell phone, ring cameras, traffic light. Man, technology be catching everything.
Because it's following your same path.
He was not in the car with me.
So how did his phone stay in your car without him?
That's why I'm like, when you're telling me, I'm hearing it for the first time. I'm like, he was not in the car with me.
Tiffany remained insistent that Keith was not in the vehicle with her that night, though at 10:51 p.m., his phone connected briefly for just 26 seconds automatically to the Wi-Fi inside her Hillsborough mansion. The phone had to have been in close proximity to the router inside Tiffany's home. On the same day that Keith's remains were discovered off the roadside in Geyserville, a SWAT team descended upon Tiffany's mansion, arresting her alongside Kaveh Bayat for murder. But it was not only these two that were implicated in the crime. An arrest had been made by the Hillsborough police quietly the day before. They had taken into custody the personal trainer and sometimes bodyguard for the couple, a man named Olivier Adela. It was information provided by the bodyguard that helped to fill in the missing pieces, making a case for their arrest. Adela claimed that Kaveh and Tiffany approached him about killing Keith months earlier. He told investigators that he had refused to take part and turned down the $50,000 offered to him. But only weeks later, he was thrown into the conspiracy anyway when Tiffany arrived at his apartment building in her SUV with Keith dead in the front seat. Kaveh told him that the time had come to pull his weight. In exchange for everything the couple had done for him, he was to dispose of Keith's body. Frightened by what would happen to him if he did not go along with them, he drove Keith out to a field and left him there. "40-year-old Olivier Adela, who sometimes went by Olivier Brendenstein, was originally from the Ivory Coast. He became a naturalized US citizen in 2011. According to his profiles online, Adela had studied abroad in France and spent over 5 years serving in the French Foreign Legion. After moving to the United States, he had some success in mixed martial arts as an MMA fighter, before launching his own limousine company. It was in this capacity that he crossed paths with Tiffany Lee and Kaveh Bayat. In 2015, Kaveh began hiring Adela as a bodyguard for various outings. The next year, they reconnected and made a more permanent arrangement. Tiffany set him and his wife Uta Bredenstein up in an apartment complex on Trousdale Drive, which was owned by her mother, and provided him with approximately $13,000 in cash for expenses. His wife was also reportedly offered a well-paying job at the family company. Adela was offered a further salary to train Kaveh in kickboxing. In late February or early March 2016, their business dealings took a turn. Adela said he was invited to Kaveh's man cave at the Hillsborough home, patted down in case he wore a wire, and told to place his phone on the counter, then asked directly by the couple to get rid of Keith. Adela offered only to scare the crap out of him, but refused to kill him. He claims he was purchased a burner phone to communicate about the scheme with Kaveh. On the night of Keith's disappearance, Adela followed Tiffany to the Pancake House in his silver Chrysler 300. Contradicting Tiffany's account, he said that Kaveh texted him around 10 p.m. that both Tiffany and Keith were leaving together in the SUV. He followed behind them in his car. Adela's car is also captured following the Mercedes from the Pancake House back towards Hillsborough. Adela claimed not to have returned to the house where the couple allegedly shot Keith dead in the garage, but rather he went back to his apartment building. In the garage of the mansion, police found a small amount of Keith's blood on the floor. Gunpowder residue was detected on a golf bag, which sat on the garage floor near to the blood stain. Keith's blood was also found on the front passenger side running board of the Mercedes. Blood was found between spaces 34 and 35 in the tenant parking area of the apartment building on Trousdale, where Olivier Adela lived, along with pieces of blue gloves. In the bodyguard's Chrysler, they found traces of Keith's blood in the trunk. Records for Adela's transponder showed the device had crossed the Golden Gate Bridge, headed south around 3:30 a.m. on April 29th. He had thrown Keith's cell phone from the window of the car while driving through the park, before continuing on to find a remote area by the side of the road to leave Keith. He told police that Keith had been stripped down to his socks before making the journey. His clothing was placed in a drawstring gym bag and later disposed of in the apartment complex garbage. They were never recovered, nor was the murder weapon, a 9mm handgun that Adela claimed had been acquired and put to use by Kaveh Bayat. The plan had been orchestrated by Tiffany Lee. From where he was being held in custody, Adela spoke with a local news reporter. He explained the sordid history of the love triangle and how he became, unwillingly, pulled into the murder scheme.
Kaveh was Keith Green's friend, right?
Yes, he met Tiffany through Keith Green, and he went beyond Keith Green, ended up brainwashing Tiffany, take Tiffany from Keith Green, making Tiffany kick Keith Green out of the mansion, moving in, make Keith Green's daughter call him daddy, and him and Tiffany only together for 6 months.
He explained that Kaveh stated that we want you to kill Keith.
Want you to get rid of Keith Green. I said, what do you mean rid of Keith Green? Kaveh is the one who was talking. He wants you to pretty much kill Keith Green.
He spoke with Kaveh while watching Tiffany and Keith discuss the children. Then he went home, only to be surprised later when Tiffany arrived at his building with Keith dead in the front seat.
So they pull up the car. The Kaveh was on the back seat, Tiffany was on the front seat, and Keith Green was on the front seat. But Keith Green was dead.
Tiffany Lee made national headlines after she managed to come up with a record-setting $35 million bond. In order to do so, she posted nearly $4 million in cash, supplemented by friends and family members posting equity in property, totaling double the outstanding amount. In order to use real estate towards bond in California, the value of the properties posted must be at least double the cash requirement. Nearly $70 million secured Tiffany's release. Co-defendants Kaveh Bayat and Olivier Adela remained in custody.
From the beginning of the case, the investigation by the sheriff's office has provided to us that she comes from a family that has many hundreds of millions of dollars available to them.
The property was actually put up by 15 to 20 extended family, friends, business associates, people that believe in Tiffany and think she, one, come to court, and two, is not guilty.
Excuse me?
Tiffany, do you have anything to do with Superman's murder?
Adela sought.
That's always a good thing when you got money, or when you find a case and you got money. Man, it's about the money.
Deal in exchange for his testimony implicating the couple. San Mateo district attorneys were weighing their options for which defendants would stand trial for the 187 charge for murder.
I know he has made multiple comments about he would like to make a deal with us and plead to some lesser charge than a 187 in exchange for truthful testimony against defendants Lee and Bayat. We have not reached any decision or conclusion as to whether or not we are going to work with him. As it stands, all three defendants are still facing murder charges, and we are set for trial against all three of them at this time, January 16th.
While the trial date approached, new information was emerging, bringing into question the credibility of Olivier Adela. To start, defense attorney Jeff Carr presented the results of a polygraph test, which showed that Adela was untruthful when asked about the shooting of Keith Green.
Did you shoot Keith Green? He answered no. His reactions were consistent with someone being deceptive regarding that issue. If you were to see the evidence that we've been able to see of what exactly they have against Mr. Adela, average person would say it's much more likely Mr. Adela did this killing than Tiffany Lee. There seems to be more evidence consistent with it being a failed kidnap than it being a murder, and that something went wrong.
Tiffany's attorneys argued that taken as a whole, the evidence pointed to the likelihood that Keith was killed during a botched kidnapping, one undertaken by Adela and perhaps one or two accomplices. In support of this theory, they pointed to a box with over $30,000 in cash found in his apartment alongside an expensive watch that was once owned by Keith Green.
Mr. Adela and potentially Confederates were seeking a gun. They ultimately may have gotten one, and they may have been involved in a kidnap attempt of Mr. Green.
Despite the points raised by Tiffany Lee's defense, the district attorney's office made a deal with Olivier Adela in February 2018. The murder charge against him would be dropped in exchange for truthful testimony against Tiffany Lee and Kabe Bayat. Two and a half years passed, and the date to begin jury selection was still pending. A further delay was announced in the spring of 2019 when it was confirmed that Tiffany Lee needed to undergo treatment for breast cancer. At that stage, Olivier Adela's attorneys successfully argued for his release, with time served. He was released, then promptly rearrested by U.S. Diplomatic Security Service agents. He faced charges of making false statements on his passport application. It seems that Olivier Adela is not, in fact, his real name. And much of the man's past was fraudulent. Agents found that Adela moved from the Ivory Coast to France, where he used a phony French passport in the name of Adela to come to the United States in 2002. Once he arrived, he successfully applied for a U.S. passport under the same name and stated that he was born a French citizen. He married shortly after arriving in the United States. Though his first wife had discovered that he had lied about his past, she also warned that he was violent. She claimed that they never formally divorced.
I am his wife. I've been married to him since 2005. I've been literally in hiding from him for, since we've split up because he threatened to kill my family and myself. He does not have a degree in anything. Nothing. None of that is true. But I've never seen any paper. I've never seen any certificate.
Who's the real Olivier Adela?
Mustafa Traore is a con artist, and he's a mean person. I just hope justice is served for Mr. Green and his daughters and their whole family.
They have the wrong people on trial. Who they should be pursuing is Mr. Olivier Adela, and that's been clear from day one. But how they're pursuing him will be up to the DA's office. But that it was perhaps a kidnap gone awry. Obviously, this man was in a trunk that had the emergency latch release removed, among other things.
Which is exactly what the police first thought and held with that view until Mr. Adela started giving him a fairy tale that now has come to its inglorious end by Mr. Adela being arrested as a liar.
Olivier Adela, or Mustafa Traore, was sentenced to a further 6 months.
Why would we kidnap Keith if the girlfriend got the money? That don't make sense. I don't think that was a kidnapping. You would kidnap the ones with the money, not the guy that's broke.
For passport fraud. Even as opening statements were due to commence in the trial of Lee and Bayat, the surprises from Adela, or Mustafa, continued. Twice there would be accusations of witness tampering connected to the MMA fighter. First, while in custody, he claimed that a fellow inmate was approached and offered money to lie, stating that Adela had admitted to committing the murder alone. When Adela caught wind of this scheme, he told his attorney.
He tells me that there's an inmate on his side of the jail who has told him that Mr. Bayat has offered him money to testify that Adela says that he actually killed Mr. Green and that Adela's wife was involved.
Prosecutors looked into these accusations but could not substantiate them, so no action was taken. They did not believe that Adela had made up the story, however, because lying to authorities would void his plea agreement. The second instance of witness tampering could not be dismissed as easily. As a condition of his release, Adela was to refrain from use of social media and contact with others involved in the case. But it emerged that he had made attempts to contact a witness set to testify for the defense, an ex-girlfriend of his. It was speculated that he wanted to know exactly what she planned to say about him. The result was not the full disintegration of his plea deal, but a decision by the district attorney's office not to put him on the stand. There were simply too many ways to attack his credibility and impeach his testimony.
It has taken twists and turns, and I dare say I think there are going to be more twists and turns in this road. We have lost our trust in the validity of his testimony.
It turns the case into an entirely different animal. You know, you work for 3 years and a case has a particular posture with a lead witness for the prosecution, and now all of a sudden he's gone. That changes everything.
When the trial finally commenced, both Tiffany Lee and Kaveh Bayat were tried together. District Attorney
Case is based in part on
tried together. District Attorney Steve Wagstaff felt confident in the state's case despite the last-minute loss of their key witness.
Case is based in part on Mr. Adela. I know Mr. Carr believes that it's based entirely on Mr. Adela. I don't concur with that view of the evidence, and again, we'll have 12 people decide it for us.
The case went to trial in September 2019. Despite the prosecution's assertion that the murder took place in the garage of the Hillsborough home, no bullet marks or shell casings were found, only what defense experts categorized as an insignificant amount of gunshot residue. GSR experts testified that the amount found on the golf bag was inconsistent with a firearm being discharged. Adela asserted that Keith was already dead from a gunshot wound and bleeding in the Mercedes when Tiffany arrived at his apartment. But no blood or DNA evidence matching his was ever found inside of the car. After 2 separate and thorough searches, only 1 small droplet of Keith's blood was found on the outside of the Mercedes, on the right exterior passenger running board. At trial, defense attorneys explained that it was a vehicle that Keith had been in the proximity of many times in the past. A droplet of blood could be explained away by innocent means. The cell phone tracking that placed Keith with Tiffany was potentially countered by surveillance showing Adela's car closely following. Keith could have already been placed alive in the trunk of the Chrysler at that time. That his cell phone connected briefly to the house Wi-Fi proved only that the phone had likely been in proximity to the router, perhaps having been driven past the house.
There is very important circumstantial evidence that can be as strong as direct evidence that Mr. Green may have been placed in the trunk of that Chrysler vehicle that took him up to dump him off in Hillsborough alive.
A friend of Tiffany's testified that on the night Keith disappeared, she had dinner with her at the Cheesecake Factory at about 6 or 6:30 p.m. Tiffany told her that she was going to meet Keith later that night. The friend said that Tiffany called her again at about 10 p.m. that night and recounted what had occurred at her meeting. She told her friend that Keith wanted to get back together with her and told her that Kaveh was not good for her and he had tried to kiss her. She left him at the Pancake House. This was the same story she had told police. The case against Kaveh Bayat was also linked to the theory of the crime outlined by Adela. The murder weapon that had been allegedly acquired by Kaveh was never identified. The burner phones used to coordinate the murder, never found. Prosecutors pointed to a pair of Keith's shoes, which they said he wore to the Pancake House, that were found displayed on a shelf in Kaveh's man cave in Hillsborough, but it certainly was not a smoking gun. When the jury first returned, they had reached a verdict for only one of the 2 defendants.
Last hour, we spotted a 31-year-old Tiffany Lee running out of the Redwood City Courthouse right here. The real estate heiress has been found not guilty of killing the father of her children. Her family had posted $35 million.
Money, money, money. You got the money, you go walk away free. Wow, not guilty. Got the money, got the money.
Bail to keep her out of prison and jail.
Tiffany Lee was immediately released and free to leave the country, which she did.
She orchestrated all of this. I knew her for 6 years. She was evil. She was evil to me. She was evil to my son. She was just evil.
The jury took longer to return its decision regarding Kaveh Bayat, and ultimately, they were unable to come to a consensus. A mistrial was declared. 5 weeks later, prosecutors announced that they would not be seeking a retrial against Cave. They did not believe that a guilty verdict could be reached by another jury using the same evidence presented in the first trial. After 3 years in custody, he too was released.
Can you tell us what you're feeling right now?
Really cool.
Happy. The question was today for Mr. Bayat, will we retry him? Did I feel there was something could occur differently in another trial? And I have concluded the answer to that was no.
Mr. Bayat was never guilty of the crime, so it's the right decision.
I felt the evidence was sufficient to prove that the two of them were responsible for Green's death. A jury told us otherwise, and that's how our system works. As of today, there will be nobody held accountable for Keith Green's murder. The evidence ultimately was not enough.
We worked so hard, and I now have to rely on exactly what Colleen relies on, which is karma and the fact that these people have to live with what they did.
When he was finally released, Olivier Adela Brendenstein, or Mustafa Traore, spoke to the media about his request to travel to Las Vegas to compete in an MMA fight where he claimed he could have earned up to $250,000. His request was outside the conditions of his release. It had been refused. Adela was happy to discuss his fighting career, but not his role in the murder of Keith Green.
I'm 43 years old.
And there's still a market for MMA fighters who are 43?
Yeah, because it's commercial. You got to be able to commercialize. You got to be able to sell the fight. I'm still in great shape, 2,500 push-ups a day.
You allowed people, Keith Green's friends and family, to search for him for days upon days, and you knew where he was and what happened, right?
Yeah, I think we have to go now then.
Why not go to the police beforehand, before Keith Green died?
I can't talk about it again. No, I will stop you right there. You know I can't talk about that.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, well, now you know.
Right there, I'm gonna stop you.
Keith Green's mother, Colleen Cudd, on behalf of herself and her 2 granddaughters, filed a wrongful death suit against Tiffany Lee. A settlement was reached in early 2023. Tiffany, who had relocated with her daughters to China, blamed xenophobia, Asian hate, and falsehoods publicized against her for her treatment in the media and had argued that the settlement should remain under seal. But a year later, a judge ruled that the details of the lawsuit could be made public. She had agreed to pay Colleen $100,000 and $5 million each to her 2 daughters. Colleen had stated that she's glad the settlement money ensured that the girls had something for themselves when they turned 18 and that they weren't controlled by their mother. It would also allow them to reach out to her and the rest of the Green family in the future.
The money that was given to the kids was going to go to the kids anyway. This didn't cost the Lee family anything because those kids are in line. They're the only heirs of Tiffany.
She wanted to live her life. She wanted to move on with her private life. She wanted to raise her girls and just start living life again.
That was the tragic case of Keith Green. Thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to Joe Weaver.
Man, you guys get in the comments. Let me know what you guys think of this case. That's crazy. They beat it. You got money, you could beat it. You got a chance of beating anything, beating murder. But you guys get in the comments. Let me know what you think. See you on the next episode.